It is 10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Mandatory minicamp continues at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Coordinators spoke with the media before practice yesterday, and offensive coordinator Nick Holtz talked about the process of installing a new offense during the offseason program.
It's been really good. We feel like we've gotten most of the system in, so now we've really coached it for a second or a third time, so we've been able to see kind of the growth from just like the learning the plays to actually kind of taking the techniques, applying to the plays and that kind of deal. So I feel like the guys are getting more comfortable in the offense and kind of everything we're asking them to do. So it's been good progress so far.
Today is the final day of mandatory minicamp. Post-practice press conferences begin with Brian Callahan, scheduled to start at 12:45. You can hear those live right here on The Zone. The Kansas City Chiefs are reportedly re-signing free agent wide receiver Mecole Hardman on a one-year deal. Hardman caught the game-winning touchdown in overtime in the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory over the 49ers in February. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
So old Dixie got you, did she?
I don't want to talk about it.
I leave you alone, the two of you, for 45 minutes yesterday. And no sooner do I walk out this door than I am inundated with texts, tweets, video clips of you saying profanity into the microphone in the 1 hour, not even an hour, that I entrust you to do this radio show without
the hyperbole. The hyperbole. 1 hour, not an hour. Text, maybe 3 texts. Video, no video.
You want
profanity?
Video?
Profanity. What is profane about the word Dixie, other than it being on, a few establishments in Gatlinburg that had to be taken down?
Well, there is that, of course. But no, when said with the last name Normus, one would find that slightly problematic, would one not?
I don't know why Buck is talking about this. He famously on primetime fell for Poipel Neupel, which he said phonetically.
Poipalnoypal.
There you go.
Had to think about it for a
Poipel
second.
Neupel, spelling bee ding.
So the hypocrisy is alive and well, is what you're saying.
No, because that is on a YouTube live stream show where there are no rules. There are some rules, but not really there are any rules. Not FM radio, not FCC safe radio, where everybody in their cars swerved when they heard this.
Dixie Normus on the F&M Big Chat says,
Go ahead and tell me that's as bad as what I did. Go ahead. Try and look me in the eyes. You won't. You haven't looked me in the eyes in years in this relationship.
I was wondering why the lights are off in here.
He won't talk to me with the lights on anymore. We have to do it with the lights off at this point in time.
Turn around.
Yeah. So I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me that what you did was worse or was not as bad as what I did.
that sounds manufactured, that audio.
Oh, you think it's AI?
It's amazing what you can do with AI these days.
Well, as the 45th president of the United States would say in these times. Indeed.
You're running that in the ground, huh?
Yeah.
Don't look at me like that. Look, I'm on Lucas's side.
Why are you here?
I was asked to be here. I actually
not
looked
by me.
I looked into the chat, and he actually got rave reviews yesterday. I pulled some of the comments for some other users. I'd like to read them to you now.
You did not print this off like mean tweets.
Ben Dover says, this was the best part of the show. Hugh Janus says, we love Lucas. Anita Go for a Dump says, more Lucas, please.
That's not even...
Anita, go for a dump. And Haywood Jablomi says, when is Snead going to practice?
Okay. I would like to say something, please. Because I feel I have
You want to say more things?
I feel I have
gone
been...
well for you lately?
I think I have been hoodwinked. I was bamboozled. some would say led astray yesterday by the F&M Bank chat. And I have a message to Mr. Normus, if that is his real name.
I don't think
Mr. or Mrs. Normus. Identity theft is not a laughing matter. And there could be a real Normus underscore or Normus comma Dixie running around in the world out there. Think about those people. Think about those people before you come into the YouTube chat with a name like that. What if there is a real Normus comma Dixie running around? I did everything right, all right? I trusted the YouTube chat. I tried to include them in the show. I tried to include them in the conversation. I did everything right, Jackson. They indicted me.
You are damn right I'm running that drop into the ground. There is no, I will find a use for that drop every segment if you let me.
Oliver Closeoff is in the chat now and says, when are we getting Bert to dress up like corn? That is Monday.
That is Monday, 10:20. Cheyenne, Bert's wonderful girlfriend, whom he does not deserve, will be in studio to braid his hair and dress him. What's the name of the lead singer of Korn with a K?
Jonathan Davis.
Jonathan Davis. Bert will be dressed as Jonathan Davis because, of course, famously, the Evansville Purple Aces, one of few 4 seeds in the history of college baseball to advance to a super regional at the fate of ECU and the Pirates. You could have had me in a pirate outfit. You didn't. Instead, you get Bert as corn.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
His punishment feels way worse than what yours would have been. Putting on a pirate hat?
No, because you have to put a hat on. He wanted to get a fake parrot to put on my shoulder. He wanted an eye patch.
Yeah. I think you should still do that for the bit. For the bit.
Duck Falling says Bert is a hood figure, probably gets his hair cut on Jefferson Street. Under no circumstances. It's funny because I live closer to Jefferson Street than Bert does. No, we had many volunteers, and we thought the safest situation, Bert wanted somebody else than Cheyenne.
Well, yeah, I asked what they looked like. You're like, many women have signed themselves up to braid your hair.
I didn't say that many women had signed themselves up to braid your hair, but we did have many volunteers from my neighborhood in North Nashville who were willing to come in studio and braid your hair.
Well, listen, I got a lot of hair. If they want to come in here, I've always told Cheyenne she needs to learn to share me. If you'd like to bring another woman in studio to braid my hair, I think that's perfectly fine. This is not an open hair relationship. I'm not condoning this. What, are you going to come in with a shirt that's got a pineapple on it? Yeah, look, I'm just saying.
Or no, it's an upside down pineapple, right?
I don't think it matters. I don't think they're like, pineapple, come on now.
Somebody call the West Haven neighborhood in Franklin and we can get some clarification
Call up that Titans fan that used to dress as a pineapple at Titans games when Mariota was the quarterback.
I haven't seen him since Mariota was the quarterback of the Titans. I don't know if that man still exists. He's probably out there somewhere in the stands. Do you think he's struggling with the lack of infamy that comes with taking the pineapple suit off?
It's a long way down from the top.
So
how do you come back?
I don't know.
Can you send me to the shadows?
All right, take your ass to the shadows. I'm done with you today.
Hairy butts!
Oh, no.
Don't break anything. God. You want to talk about Titans minicamp? Because it was the worst day the quarterbacks had this offseason.
Panic, everyone. Panic!
Well, I mean, it's not insignificant for this reason. So you said you wanted to play the game yesterday. Famously, big deal, litter deal, or no deal.
Little deal.
No, you said litter, so that's the game that we're going to play now.
You said litter.
This is also a cat dad show, famously, so litter deal is now the game that we will play instead of little deal. Your struggles in front of a microphone lately are delightful. This is.
Oh, listen to this.
Just the
listen
way
to who is talking.
Oh yeah, but I'm not supposed to be a professional broadcaster. I'm just a loudmouth that they put a microphone in front of me. You are supposed to be.
Well, we all are that to some extent.
The professional broadcaster among us. So when I trip over myself talking, it's not a big deal. When you do it, it's hilarious.
I thought the F&M Bank chat was my ally. That's what hurts about this. That's what hurts because it was a perfectly reasonable and well thought out comment about Rashad Weaver and what the Titans need out of him as a key depth piece on the edge this season.
And it turned into Dixie.
I feel a little betrayed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it comes for you quickly in this situation, especially when you're alone. Were you sitting in your chair or my chair?
No, I'm sitting in this chair. I don't move over to that chair. That wouldn't make any sense.
Well, it would make a lot of sense in this power struggle that we've got going on here for the last couple of months. But long story short, it was the quarterback's worst day of practice, specific to Will Levis. Now, beyond him, skipping a ball off Amulet Lake like it's a rock, he was pretty inaccurate in the 7-on-7s. And it is a little deal, or for our show, a litter deal, because he's talking about working on mechanical stuff. He's talking about tweaks that he's making to what it is that makes Will Levis the quarterback that he has been throughout the course of his career. Now, that's a good thing. You want him to constantly be evolving, trying either new or different kinds of footworks to improve his base, looking to see if he can make his release more efficient, although it is a pretty efficient release, honestly. The fact that it's that compact and still flies the way that it does is one of the crazier things that I've seen from an NFL quarterback. But we're going to get into it coming up next, why it's important, why it's of note that the quarterback struggled. There's two big reasons that we're going to discuss over the course of the show. And the fact that you let me make it 11 minutes into the show without reminding and telling the audience that I botched the Tony Pollard interview so we can't play that for them today is an upset by you. That would have been the most effective way for you to undermine me, and I appreciate you taking the high road for once.
That is your fault. Yes, we could have a great conversation with Tony Pollard, even featuring Tajay Spears on hand.
It was so good. We got the Tajay cameo outside the locker room. It was excellent, and I screwed up the audio.
But Buck just ended up just wasting the running back's time, I suppose.
Well, we had a nice chat. I don't know. He didn't seem like he hated it, but yes, I wasted everybody's time. But today, I promise I'll be better when I go down to practice and get Caleb Farley to talk to, because Caleb Farley, a very interesting figure in all of this, despite the actual football application or lack thereof of Caleb Farley in recent years. So, coming up next, why it's of note that Will Levis struggled at practice yesterday and what things you need to pay attention to see how he fixes it. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Are you not able to enjoy this summer as much as you want because of joint pain? It's the best time of year for being outdoors, but not if your knees, shoulders, back, or hips are hurting. Don't suffer any longer. Non-surgical joint pain relief is here at QC Kinetics, so call them today. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. I'm talking lasting joint pain relief with no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. QC Kinetics advanced treatments harness your own body's ability to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue so you can walk, run, hike, and play golf again and move again pain-free. QC Kinetics is under the leadership of former orthopedic surgeon Dr. Mitchell Shinecup, who is a true pioneer in the field of regenerative medicine. Their advanced protocols have enabled tens of thousands of patients to reclaim their mobility. So stop putting it off, take action now, and live your best life again at QC Kinetics. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024. Welcome back to the show on this Thursday. We are fueled by Hatty Bee's Hot Chicken. Thanks for hanging out. 615-737-1045. Minicamp musings. Is that what you landed on? OT takeaways and minicamp musings. You can't do any better than that. You've had 24 hours to sleep on it to come up with something better.
Some call me an artist, and I accept that responsibility.
God. Yeah. Name one person who's ever referred to you in any capacity as an artist.
Jackson?
Mr. Normus?
Mrs. Anyway, minicamp musings out of Wednesday's minicamp work was that it was Will Levis's worst day. He was 3 of 8 combined in the 2 7-on-7 sessions, including the ball that flew over the fence and skipped off Amulet Lake.
Okay. For the sake of accuracy, the football landed on the grass, bounced off the grass, and then cleared the fence on the bounce and ended up into the lake. You make it sound like Levis reared up and just yeeted this thing 70 yards over the practice field, over the SeatGeek Terrace, and into Amulet Lake.
It did hit a couple of things on the way to the lake. It's probably fair to note. That is an important clarification by Lucas. But still, it kind of speaks to how hard he throws that football, Lucas. Nate Tice is going to join us on the radio show on Tuesday of Yahoo Sports, and he's been doing a lot of Levis film breakdowns from last season. There's a pass against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the red zone. And tell me if you saw this one on Twitter yesterday, where Chigakonkwo is open to make the play. Now, I think a lot of Titans fans would point to it as a bad drop on Chig. And then you look at the speed, the velocity that Levis just piss missiles that ball into the window.
Joe Milton style.
I mean, it is Milton-esque. Like, I would not... Levis inside of 20 yards, I would fear, because he does have to work on the touch, on layering the ball in there. Now, it's a really, really tight window throw that few quarterbacks would even have the velocity and arm strength to get to the tight end, but it's way too hot coming off of Levis's arm, and it bounces off Chig's hands. And I think a lot of people would go back and say, oh, well, that's Chigakonkwo, and he's struggling in the early part of the season. That's a drop. I'm more inclined to give Chig a pass on that one because Levis tried to throw it through his chest. So the velocity of the football and, bounces weird bounces that footballs take anyway caused it to vault over the fence at that point. But still, it was a struggle. Now, here's why it's worth monitoring, but not the end of the world. Because he's working on some things. He's working on some new techniques. He's working on new footwork. He's working on new mechanics. This is the time where you'll want it to look a little rocky, so that as we get closer to training camp and as he has more time in the 6-week break that we're getting ready to have in the NFL to improve upon that, to commit it to muscle memory, essentially. He was 1 of 4 in the first 7-on-7 period, is what Jimmy Wyatt had him charted at, 2 of 4 in the second 7-on-7. So on the whole, 3 of 8 for the day. They did a couple of different drills yesterday. They were focused on empty sets specifically. When I talked to Tony Pollard in the interview that you'll never hear because I botched the audio, Pollard was describing the way that it was kind of giving him different dimensions to work on, how it was allowing the quarterback to operate with more control. Because I think we saw this with Levis, and empty sets, just nobody in the backfield. If you're not familiar, if we're using terminology that sounds a bit foreign. Empty sets just means no players in the backfield, just the quarterback and your 5 wide at that point. They can use the running backs this way, and it's not... Tony Pollard has route craft to him, but that's not really what he was in the Dallas offense, right? He, at least for Dak, was a safety valve. And he can run routes, and he can make plays with the ball in his hand.
A former wide receiver.
But they're not sending him out on so many routes in the Dallas offense as much as he's there to be able to make a play or make a play in the flat, or there he is, on the quick, what I call them, stop routes, when he just leaks behind the line of scrimmage and is there to make the play. More of a check down option than he was an outright receiver in the Dallas offense. Here in Tennessee, I think they're going to get a little creative with it. They've talked about it. I mean, are you surprised? You mentioned, I believe yesterday, that Treylon Burks was the most talked about Titans player of the offseason for a variety of different reasons. Are you surprised that the running backs are second? because every person that gets up on that podium, every player who is working within that offense has talked about the running backs in glowing terms. And not to the point like where we're talking about Treylon Burks and his teammates trying to gas you up and maintain your confidence and make sure that you're still, locked in and committed.
Coaches.
And things like that. But across the board, coaches, players, everybody keeps glowing about these two running backs.
They are the second most talked about players on this football team. Of all the moves that this team made in the offseason, we would have predicted L'Jarius Sneed being in this conversation, Will Levis being in this conversation, maybe Calvin Ridley, maybe one of the draft picks. Nope. It is the running backs and Treylon Burks, the fourth, maybe fifth wide receiver in this pecking order that have been by far the most discussed by people actually at the facility, by players and coaches that are in that building every day. Yeah, it's not close. I agree with you.
So, creativity with the running backs, empty sets the focus yesterday, and how the quarterback was responding when he was in more control of the situation was the thing that you wanted to monitor. And so when he struggles that way, what are you looking at? You're looking at the things that he's talked about. You're looking at his footwork. You're looking at his mechanics. And that was something, at least first and foremost, that's where the discussion starts. This was Will Levis on, what was that, Tuesday when the quarterback talked? Levis on Tuesday talking specifically about the mechanics that he is working on at this time of year.
Yeah, no, I mean, quarterbacks are weirdos. We're always tweaking with something. We always feel like something might be off. Like you saw Brady go through a handful of different footworks throughout one season. And just ball wasn't coming out the way that I would have liked it to. And we just started looking at what could potentially be the cause of it and just been messing around with things, specifically with my base, that I feel like have got me into a good spot.
Did you come to them with that, or did they come to you? Just kind of what was the genesis of starting to tweak it?
I think it was both. I mean, it was obviously, I know when I'm not throwing it my best, and just talking through with Bo and Nick and Brian about why that might be, and just a couple of things that I can kind of hold in the back of my head and practice and pre-practice, and then hopefully have it transition into drills, and I feel like it has so far.
Seems like you're also holding the ball up towards your ear more, or above your shoulder more. Is that something that you're cognizantly doing too?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I can get to points during practice where I'm too low and not getting my arm up a little bit. Some throws require different arm slots, so being able to have everything in that clock is important. But yeah, I feel like I have been working on being able to get a little bit more over the top sometimes.
So that's Will Levis and talking about the adjustments that he's making in year two specific to the coaching of Brian Callahan, Bo Hardegree, the quarterback's coach, and Nick Holtz, the OC. Nick Holtz, the coordinators talked yesterday. It's the first time that we've heard from Colt Anderson. We played a little of that audio for you yesterday, the new special teams coach talking about the new kickoff rules and how they're kind of strategizing around it. Nick Holtz, there were some takeaways, but it was more, I think the larger headlines came out of Denard Wilson's, as it seems to be the case on a regular basis when these individuals speak. Denard Wilson had the bigger headlines come out of his media availability. But Holtz talked about this as well and the specific places where they're working on it and how it will look different. And, when we're working on empty sets, when he's got play action situations, all these different things that they're trying to figure out what he's comfortable with, how he does it now, and how they can try and find the most efficient version of it that still allows him to operate with ease. And that's good. I want to see him struggle at some point. Just to say, it's the tired, or you may consider it tired, but it's the thing that coaches hammer in and year out at this time of year, which is make the mistakes, but just don't make them twice. Show us that you understand, that you grasp what we're trying to teach you. And when you make those mistakes, articulate. Same thing when they drafted Levis out of Kentucky, right? What were they impressed with? How he could articulate in real time the mistakes that he was making on the film that they were showing him, whether that was the 30 visit, the combine, or whenever they got together with Will Levis in the pre-draft process. The thing that made them more comforted in drafting him and made them interested in trading up potentially in the first round to try and get him is that he made them feel better about all the different places where they saw him make mistakes in college.
Also, we're talking about a sample size of 8 attempts in 7-on-7s.
What we have to work with.
Yeah, no, it's what we have. I get that. But
we've got 2 days. He did well in the first day. He did poorly in the second day. Now we see how he rebounds. And I know you're going to get into this, or we'll get into this at noon, and Ramon Foster is going to be on the show at 12:20 specific to the offensive line. And I know he was out there at practice yesterday, so I'm sure there will be some additional observations that he may have made or some details that he can add to that I may not have picked up on. But there's also an element of, okay, how does he handle it? How does he process it mentally? Which I know we'll get to in the noon hour as well. But outside of that, Jack Gibbons made a nice interception for the defense. Did you get into any of this when I left to go to practice at any point in the last couple of days? That Callahan talking about Gibbons? I got some questions about Gibbons, right? Is he starting as an inside linebacker for this team right now? And I have to clarify all this by saying, unless they tell us, like the players tell us, we're not allowed to report on where guys are lining up when we're at practice. So we have to have them tell us before we can kind of give you those details. So, with that being said, Gibbons has been taking a lot of the reps. And Callahan's asked about this a couple of days ago. I guess on Tuesday, the last time he spoke. He'll speak again today. And he said, well, we really like how intelligent of a player he is, and goes into some detail on that. The follow-up was, well, what do you do with a player who's got the intelligence and the intellect to be able to handle what it is that you're trying to get across to not just him, but the rest of the team, if in this whole green dot, great debate, green dot gate, we'll call it. And Callahan gave some comments to the effect of, basically, you don't have to be the highest end athlete to be a successful off-ball linebacker. You just don't have to understand how to get yourself in the best spot to make the play as soon as the ball comes out. Gibbons apparently is doing that at this point well enough that they're comfortable giving him more reps. Will that play itself out in training camp? Will that be indeed the case by the time this team opens up on September the 8th in Chicago against the Bears? I have no idea. But for those of you who are interested in those kind of position battles, Sadiq Charles at right guard sounds like, at least at the start of training camp, is what they're going to do. And Jack Gibbons at inside linebacker is something that I would very much keep an eye on as they ramp Cedric Gray up and as they work Kenneth Murray into the mix. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. We also talked to Harold Landry yesterday. It was his birthday. 28th birthday for Harold Landry. Longest tenured Titan. We talked about the longest tenured offensive players, Nick Westbrook-Akina. Harold's the longest tenured Titan. He said to the effect of, it's kind of crazy to think about that even at 28, he's the longest tenured player on the defense. Bert and I did this bit last night, and I want to see how it lands on you. If you got Harold Landry something for his birthday, what would you get him? Because I got a football answer, and I'm curious to see where you two take it.
Oh, I can't say I know Harold Landry personally enough to not have a football answer. I don't know. A watch? I don't know. What kind of question is that? I have no idea.
Well, it's a fun question. What would you get Harold Landry for his birthday?
Clearly, this is setting up for you to tell me what you would get him for his birthday. So why don't we just skip all that stuff and get to the part that you clearly want to get to?
Thank you, Lucas. Finally, after 3 years, you understand how to work this situation. I'd get him Matt Judon. I'd trade for Matt Judon. Bert and I were talking about this yesterday because primetime we're doing a bit, and it's the B block, so it's not like it's the headline topic of the day. So Bert comes up with, well, what would you get Harold Landry for his birthday? And I had the same reaction that you did. I don't know. I'm not getting him what is Harold Landry, off-ball linebacker, making $20+ million a year need for his birthday? I have no idea.
A lottery ticket? I don't know.
So Bert comes up with this idea of Matt Judon. How do you feel about the Titans edge rushing group right now? Because I know you got into it after I left and when you played the Weaver interview. Did you have any takeaways from the Weaver interview? Because it's Arden Key and Rashad Weaver, in essence, competing for that job next to Harold Landry.
Yeah.
Both of those players have already had the opportunity to claim full-time starting roles. Harold Landry missed the entirety of the 2022 season. Rashad Weaver played in, I believe, if not every game, damn near every game, had 5 sacks, was not good enough to be a full-time starter. Arden Key last year. Moments where Arden looks great, moments where Arden disappears, and that's been outside of making him a situational pass rusher, that's kind of been Arden's MO as a football player prior to him landing in Tennessee. Now comes around again another opportunity for the both of them to win a full-time outside linebacker job. And as I sit here and look at this, and I wonder how many of these conversations are being had in the defensive meeting rooms as well, and how much it will change once they get pads on, do they have enough? What kind of resources do they have? And what's available out there from a team that might be interested in some draft capital? Because Matt Judon makes so much sense to me.
Well, the Titans' pass rush, I think, will have to come from the interior and from the defensive backfield. And the key is for Arden Key and Harold Landry to benefit from that. I'm not saying sending corner blitzes every play, right? When I'm talking about the defensive backfield, I'm talking about how an elite defensive back group can help you up front on defense. Building a defense back to front, right? We've talked about that with Denard Wilson.
And we've talked about why that makes a ton of sense in today's NFL.
And it worked for the Ravens last year with the best defense in the NFL. Now, Mike McDonald was in charge of that defense. Now he's the coach of the Seahawks. So how much of that can Denard Wilson bring over remains to be seen. But like we talk about any player on the Titans offense, like Tyjae Spears or Will Levis or Peter Skoronski, benefiting from the situation around them being far better, that conversation applies directly to Arden Key and Harold Landry as well. The situation around them on all levels of the defense is better, theoretically, up front and in the defensive backfield with the moves they've made. As in, that's what they've tried to do this offseason, right? The second-round pick of T'Vondre Sweat to pair with Jeffrey Simmons. We'll see what happens on the defensive line with those depth pieces. But if the Titans cannot get that pressure from the interior, like the Ravens did last year with Justin Madubuike, like we talked about, the Ravens did not have an elite pass rushing core. It wasn't thought of as that going into last year. Elite defensive backfield, generating pressure from the interior, and those guys were able to clean up on the outside. It feels like the Titans are kind of trying to make that approach in 2024. Sure. Whether or not it works, if T'Vondre Sweat is able to be what they need him to be, I have no idea. But
I would love for him to just practice.
Sure. Clearly that's the approach, though.
I would love for him to practice at this point. Because I think a lot of people are, now that T'Vondre Sweat's here and you just kind of assume, and you see the highlights, and he's obviously a high-level player at Texas, you're assuming that it's just going to immediately translate and that you should pencil him in. Now, he absolutely needs to be a starter by the time that this thing goes. Otherwise, we are going to crush them for passing on trade opportunities to stick and pick at 39 for a player who already had some questions around him. We are going to, and justifiably so, crush them. But we don't have that yet. There's no reason to panic about that kind of stuff yet. It's just the kind of questions that are coming up at this time of year as you see how the competitions play out. So
you're saying a trade for Matthew Judon?
I'm saying a trade for Matthew Judon. He's 14.6 against the cap this year. They still have about $25 million in effective cap space.
He'll be 32 this season
that they have to work with, and he's coming off a year where he only played in 4 games because he had a torn bicep situation. But in those 4 games, Lucas, how many sacks did he have?
He had 4 sacks in 4 games.
4 sacks in 4 games. He's a high-level player even at 32, and I think why can't he or somebody like that be this defense's Kyle Van Noy? Because that's what they're kind of missing. They're missing a savvy veteran edge player, not named Harold Landry, who's 28 and a veteran, but you understand what I'm saying. One of these mercenary types that can take some of the pass rush snaps off of Weaver or Arden and platoon this thing a little more effectively. I think it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't have to make sense until the trade deadline, as far as I know. I have no idea what the Patriots are going to be in 2024. They may be good enough where they're not interested in selling parts for draft capital. But if I'm just thinking about how different ways that we or that they can address that roster, I think the Matt Judon thing makes a lot of sense. You could have said a gavel. That would have been an easy birthday present for Honor Landry.
A gavel? Yeah, that'd be good. Just how much draft capital are you going to be willing to give up for a 32-year-old coming off a torn bicep?
I mean, there's precedent for you. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything but a day 3 pick. Like I'm not talking about giving up a first-round pick for Matt Judon. It's a contract that's got money left on it. If you let it go throughout the course of the season, then that figure gets lower the closer that you get to the trade deadline, and then it's justifiable. Depending on how both of their seasons go. I'm just, looking at them right now on a practice field without any pads and saying, I still, despite liking the corner group and thinking they're 1 through 4 at corner right now, provided that Snead and Awuzie are even just not Pro Bowl level, but good to above average. I like their 1 through 4. That's probably one of the positions I feel best about the depth. but the edge rushing situation is pretty anemic. If you're relying on Arden Key and Rashad Weaver to do something that they never have before, doesn't mean that they can't, just means they haven't yet. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Lucas got very excited yesterday because we have the new schedule for the 12-team college football playoff. And I think that he particularly enjoyed the idea that it's going to go head-to-head with the NFL. So we'll ask you, what would you be more interested if given the option of main screen or smaller screen? What's getting the main screen between the college football playoff and a couple of key NFL matchups that we're going to tell you about coming up next? Lucas was dancing drunk and naked in the streets last night, not because it was CMA Fest. You want to tell him why?
No.
Sounds game.
CMA, yeah, I was at the Sounds game. Great time out there on 104.5 The Zone night. But no, CMA Fest had me fuming this morning when I was trying to get to the station. Not going to drive through downtown anymore until the weekend is over. But you sent this in that the college football playoff will begin on December 20th of 2024. The newly expanded 12-team playoff will kick off with a first-round game on December 20th. And on December 21st, it will go head-to-head with the National Football League. There are 2 NFL games that day. The Houston Texans against the Kansas City Chiefs at 1 p.m. and the Baltimore Ravens against the Pittsburgh Steelers at 4:30 p.m. College football playoff first-round action will be at 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. on the same day. And I said, yes, college football putting its dukes up to the NFL with the newly expanded playoff.
Why are you so excited to lose? What now? Because I think there's a genuinely good argument to be made, because they're both going to do numbers, right? It's still football. The most popular sport in the United States is the NFL. The second most popular sport in the United States is college football, and then it's, a very, very distant third place to the next most popular thing with sports, at least in this country. College football has been pretty reticent to go up against the NFL like this. Now, there's not been that many opportunities, and I think there's some contingent of college football fans that hate when the NFL takes over Saturdays once we get later in the season and stuff like that, and the college football bowl games, and you've got that layoff between the bowl games and the college football playoff and all that kind of stuff. But this makes that void much more interesting, because now you're getting the best of both. Because these are good matchups in the NFL. Steelers-Ravens is one of the headline events every year, and it's Texans-Ravens as well?
Texans-Chiefs.
Texans-Chiefs.
Which is a great game. Yes.
A huge game.
2 AFC contenders.
To hear C.J. Stroud tell it, he's the third best quarterback in football. The first 2 are Pat and Lamar. So, Stroud versus Mahomes, Lamar versus the Steelers, Ravens-Steelers, and whomever is in the college football playoff games when those 2 things go off. It is going to be matchup dependent. And I still think that the NFL is going to do the bigger number.
Oh, nationally, of course it is.
Do you so?
Yes, of course it is. Like, if we're talking about first round.
So I guess what is your excitement about college football putting up? What the average age if somebody says put up their dukes?
Why I oughta? No, I was saying that tongue in cheek. Obviously,
1930s is that?
But look, I'm going to be watching both, right? Like on the F&M Bank chat. Cole,
the answer is both.
Cole says split screen will be doing wilt numbers. Like yes, it is going to be the multiple screen scenario.
Wilt numbers.
But Drew on the F&M Bank chat, I'm sticking to first names from here on out.
Yeah, you're
says,
so scared. Look at you.
CFP would probably win in Nashville, to be honest. Taylor says, I will watch college games over non-Titans NFL without question. Thomas says, if it's a good matchup, college will beat NFL in this part of the country.
In this part of the country, sure. But nationally, I don't even know if that's a sure thing.
I mean, first round of the college football playoff.
It depends who's in it.
Yeah, we're talking about, hypothetically, let's say Kansas State against, I don't know, Ole Miss.
I'm going to pull up the AP top 25 from last season, and we'll run through some hypotheticals.
Well, Kansas State, who has an exciting quarterback in there who flashed during the Pop-Tart Bowl last year against Ole Miss, right, who is figured to be a college football playoff contender, to be in the playoff, that's trying to make a big leap under Lane Kiffin after kind of starting to string together a standard of 10-plus win seasons. What would that kind of matchup do? So Ole Miss, Kansas State. What would that kind of matchup do against Texans, Ravens?
It's going to get beat.
Nationally, yes. I'm talking about regionally.
Regionally? So let's just keep it to Nashville, okay? Let's keep it to Nashville. What's going to rate better? Texans, Chiefs, or you said Ole Miss, K-State?
Ole Miss, K-State in the first round of the CFP on campus in Oxford, in front of a crazy environment.
A huge benefit for both the television numbers, I think, because the atmospheres of home stadiums in the college football playoff is such a big carrot this year.
Mm-hmm.
I love that component of it. I still think that Texans and Chiefs is going to beat out locally, if we're keeping it to the Nashville metro area where you see the News Channel 5 ratings come out, I think, pretty regularly on that, or whomever has the game. I would still take Texans and Chiefs in that scenario. There is a strong contingent of Ole Miss fans in Middle Tennessee, of Ole Miss alum in Middle Tennessee, for certain. The K-State thing is what kills you. Not kills you. It's still going to do a number. It's a college football playoff game, and those are two name brands, and they're in the top 12 of college football. But
how much do you think it being the first college football playoff game in a home stadium elevates the number? People are going to be curious to see how this works.
That's the other thing. This is the first time that we're getting this kind of, it's going to be standard moving forward. And if anything else, it's just going to expand more, right? We're anticipating now that we've got 12, we're very soon going to have a 16-team playoff at some point in the near future, one would think.
It's like the NFL expanding past 17. It very much feels like a when, not if.
Yeah, well, 17 was a weird number anyway, but still. So this year it's what's the word? Something better than an anomaly. It's just something we haven't had before. So we get for the first time this option. I do think that will boost it on the front end in the first year of having that, Jackson, because I'm as curious as anybody. On the main screen for me is for sure going to be the college football playoff game. But for the purposes of, I'm an NFL reporter, I cover a team in the AFC South, and obviously the Chiefs and the Texans has huge implications for the Titans. My vantage point is going to be a little slanted because I'm going to be as focused on Texans and Chiefs, if not more, as what's on the main screen, which should be the college football playoff game, no matter who's in it. So yeah, if it's let's take that's a bad example. A 10 versus a 3. Ohio State versus Texas would do a monster number in 2024, depending on how those two teams are ranked. Oregon, let's say Oregon and LSU. Oregon and LSU is an interesting one.
In Baton Rouge.
Because Oregon was the higher seed last year, so it would be in Oregon.
Be a great environment at Eugene.
Either way, it's a great environment. It's two huge brands in the world of college football. Do you think that would pose a greater threat, an actual threat, to Steelers-Ravens? Or is it going to take a game of real, legitimate consequence, a second-round playoff game to make it down?
To outrate a late-season NFL game, it would have to be two massive programs, two massive brands in a game of major, major consequence, like a CFP quarterfinal or semifinal. Now, the main reason I'm really excited about this is because it's laid out the calendar for us really for the first time. And the idea of having elimination games in the college football playoff beginning on December 20th and just going through the rest of the calendar year, culminating with the national championship game in early January, gets me very excited because of that gulf that we've had in the college football calendar for so long, where it's conference championships, a bunch of bowl games, which I love the bowl games, and we still get the bowl games mixed in with the CFP games that I am still going to watch, but with meaningful games mixed in there, elimination games that mean something towards the national championship, so we don't have that 3-week pause between conference championship weekend and college football playoff weekend. That is the biggest reason why I'm really excited about this, that on the Saturday after conference championship weekend, it's not just, all right, we get a couple of NFL games. Now we get a couple of NFL games and college football playoff games. That's what excites me about this.
We all win.
Watching all of it.
More football. More football is always a good thing to have. Absolutely. So there are some interesting components to this that the chat is bringing up, but we can get to those in the second hour. We're also, speaking of the Ravens, going to take a look at the Baltimore Ravens, given that the Titans hired the Ravens defensive backs coach to be their new defensive coordinator, and there's a lot of moving parts in Baltimore that involve a former Titans legend. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Mandatory minicamp continues at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Outside linebacker Harold Landry met with the media after practice yesterday and talked about this new-look Titans defense under new defensive coordinator Denard Wilson.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's awesome. And then you look at the guys that we have in the back end. I just feel like there's going to be so many ops for us to be productive up front. And, I feel like we're all excited up front. To have him come in and running with his scheme and the players in the back end and everything, it could be this could be an awesome year.
Today is the final day of mandatory minicamp at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Post-practice press conferences begin with Brian Callahan, scheduled to start at 12:45. You can hear those live right here on The Zone. The Kansas City Chiefs are reportedly re-signing free agent wide receiver Mecole Hardman on a one-year deal. Hardman caught the game-winning touchdown in overtime in the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory over the 49ers in February. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 is upon us. We've got Titans OTAs, except they're not. It's minicamp. I keep wanting to say OTA takeaways. Lucas has got it embedded in my brain, but either way, it's mandatory minicamp. It's the last day of mandatory minicamp, which means there is 1 day of OTAs left before the NFL goes away for 6 weeks. And when we come back, training camp time. Exciting stuff. Levis looking to rebound from a bad performance in really the only bad performance we've seen him have in an open practice. He's probably had a 1 for 4 or 2 for 4 in practices that haven't been open to the media just yet, but happen to be some media out there, Titans media out there. Also some people for the Titans House season ticket holder thing. I think they're trying to showcase the team before they go ask people to spend more money on season tickets and suites and PSLs and all that. The Titans House setup they have to showcase what the new luxury options are going to be. I believe that setup is in Germantown. I didn't get the chance to go through there, but I know some people are starting to go through in waves. Looks pretty cool. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, speaking of Titans, it is a happy 32nd birthday to DeAndre Hopkins today.
Happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
Very famously not holding out of Titans mandatory minicamp. For those who might suggest otherwise, not a story. Looked pretty good in the one-handed drills and looks just as spry. It says he's doing a lot more yoga lately, DeAndre Hopkins, to make sure that he can maintain where it is his body needs to be by the time the season gets around. Hot yoga.
Speaking of one-handed drills, Anthony Richardson is out there for the Colts, and he is only throwing with his left hand.
Wait, what?
Anthony Richardson is out there today with the Indianapolis Colts, but is doing very limited work and is only throwing with the left hand, as I suppose he continues to recover from that right shoulder injury.
Can he do that? Because that would be a hell of a party trick. if we're in a divisional game, if Colts Titans comes down to the wire, all of a sudden he Carson Wentz style changes hands that he's going to throw the ball with, but actually doesn't. Because I forever have that image of Carson Wentz. Well, I think it's either Elijah Molden or somebody else around his ankles, swinging him to the ground as Carson Wentz moves the ball from his right to his left hand and throws an interception right to Kevin Byard's chest.
It's not like 7-on-7. Like high-intensity stuff. It's ladder drill and then kind of flick the ball to an assistant coach at the end of it with the left hand. So he's not going through progressions and it's not all-out drills. But he's out there. He's doing limited work. But worth noting, he is not throwing with his right hand.
Because I was wondering, somebody, you have access to the phone, 615-737-1045, of course, if you want to join the conversation. Also, live stream the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're hanging out on YouTube today, subscribe to the channel, throw us a like. James Nissen on YouTube said, Levis had a bad day of practice and media is running with it in a slow month. Meanwhile, Richardson at Colts OTAs throwing left-handed and only doing handoffs to running backs. Shoulder is trashed. I was not aware of the Richardson thing. until Lucas brought it to my attention. That's pretty crazy that they would even have him go through a practice that way as opposed to just, letting him take the day.
Yeah, he's doing some drills. Like, he's out there in he's not going through practice just throwing with his left hand. He's doing very, very limited work, and the only things he is doing are with his left hand.
You can qualify it however you want to. The idea that an NFL starting quarterback is out there doing any kind of drills left-handed with consistency makes me curious about what Shane Steichen is.
Tua.
Yeah, the ones who aren't left-handed. It's news, because I swear to God, if it happens in an AFC South game, everybody's going to look around and be like, what the hell is that? What just happened here? And Anthony Richardson is throwing bombs with his left hand because he's a hell of an athlete. So we'll see if it happens or if it's just a very, very big red flag about his throwing shoulder, which, of course, he hurt in Week 5 against the Titans. We're not here to talk about that, though. We'll have time to look at the Colts in more detail. Our team previews continue on with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Titans and Ravens are inextricably linked, no matter how often you talk about them and in whichever capacity, in whichever season you talk about them, because that is one of the greatest rivalries that either of the two clubs have in the NFL. It's not Ravens-Steelers, it's not Titans-Jags, but it's probably 1B if those two are the 1A rivalries. Do you consider the Titans to have a greater AFC South than the Jags for the history of beating them 3 times and keeping them from going to the Super Bowl back in '99?
Yeah, it's probably pretty generational, but it'd be an interesting poll question. Who do you hate more as a Titans fan, the Jags or the Ravens?
I bet if you put the Bengals in there, the Bengals might win. I think there's a lot of super recency bias, but I think there's a lot of animosity to Cincinnati for what happened in that playoff game. Anyway, so Lamar Jackson comes in with the second year under offensive coordinator Todd Monken. He is the defending NFL MVP. He gets Derrick Henry in the backfield, the first-time NFL free agent, 8 years with the Titans. He signs the 2-year deal to go to Baltimore. The backfield immediately gets better, more intimidating. Derrick looks even scarier in purple and black than he did in two-tone blue, which I didn't think was imagined, which I didn't think I could imagine if I was a defensive back or a linebacker, but somehow that looks like it's going to hurt more when he hits people. Their offensive line, however, in front of him is significantly different than the offensive line that had so much success with Lamar Jackson last year. They lost a couple of guys in free agency. They did draft a second-round right tackle to start for them, Roger Rosengarten, and they did draft a backup center in the 7th round. They took Nate Wiggins, the corner, out of Clemson with their first-round pick this year, and they did a lot of work in the draft and the undrafted free agency process on the defensive side of the ball. They did give Justin Madubuike a huge contract coming off a career year. And among the coaching changes that they underwent, Denard Wilson leaving Baltimore as the defensive backs coach, going over to Tennessee. They also lose Mike McDonald, who is now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and Patrick Queen, who goes from Baltimore to Pittsburgh, which is an unforgivable sin in the eyes of AFC North fans.
So Zach Orr takes over as the defensive coordinator, and he's only been coaching in the NFL since 2017, right after he finished his brief NFL career playing for the Ravens.
So young, though, because he retired. He had to make.
He's 31. He's younger than D-Hop, who just turned 32 today.
Yeah, he is. He retired. I think it was a medical reason he had to retire early because he was a decent player for them for a couple of years.
He's only been a position coach in the NFL since 2021 when he was an outside linebackers coach for the Jaguars.
So, buying or selling the Baltimore Ravens offense with the defending NFL MVP, with the primary addition being Derrick Henry, losing a lot of people as they do typically in free agency, but being one of the best organizations when it comes to the draft process and replenishing those free agent losses with cost-effective depth. Are we buying or selling the Ravens offseason?
Buying. 100% buying.
This is the second best team in football beyond Kansas City, right? Have they exceeded? Have they surpassed San Francisco and Philadelphia? I would put them, because of the quarterback, I would put them ahead of both.
Yeah, it's easy to make that argument, but they lose Odell Beckham at receiver. So their receiver core doesn't make you jump out of your seat, right? Zay Flowers headlines it. Rashad Bateman got kind of a middling deal this offseason, and Nelson Aguilar is sort of that veteran that they bring in to replace Odell Beckham Jr. Mark Andrews remains one of the best tight ends in the NFL, but he continues to get older. They beefed up that backfield in a big way. So how that impacts Todd Monken's play calling is going to be the most interesting thing, especially in big moments, and how Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are able to complement one another is going to be fascinating.
So can I buy their offense and sell their defense? Which seems a weird thing to do with the Ravens.
There's just a lot of moving parts there.
I would expect, and I don't know Zach Orr, nor have I talked to a bunch of people in the league about him, nor do I know what he's going to be like as a play caller. Nobody has the answer to that question yet. But what I know Mike McDonald to be is excellent at what he does. And I think that just as Mike Vrabel struggled to replace offensive coordinators who went on to become head coaches in the NFL, I think that it's worth monitoring for the defense. Now, the thing that they do have that was new to them last year, but they do retain, is something that we haven't talked about here relating to Denard Wilson, which is Chuck Smith. Blaine Bishop brought this up the other day.
We talked about it yesterday, yeah.
But you and Blaine talked about it yesterday?
I've talked about it yesterday. Blaine did pop in for a few minutes at the end of the hour, but did talk about that kind of being the X factor of that Ravens pass rush that wasn't littered with stars going into last season. A pass rush, which, by the way, is going to rely on Kyle Van Noy again this season. Clowney's out of there, but Kyle Van Noy is a year older. He's coming off one of the best years of his career with over 9 sacks last year. But you're talking about a pass rushing core of Broderick Washington, Odafe Owe, who flashed a little bit last year, and Kyle Van Noy. Roquan Smith still in the middle of that defense, but yeah, a lot of moving parts up front for the Ravens.
Travis Jones, a good player. David Ojabo, a solid rotational piece. Like, they've got some stuff to work with there, but they do keep it pretty tight. They do get, or at least under Mike McDonald, they were pretty creative in how they sent their four-man pressures while maintaining that numbers advantage in coverage when you can get that pressure with four. So I would buy the offense, I would sell the defense, and I don't think there's any need for a roundtable discussion as to whether the Ravens are Super Bowl contenders or not.
I wouldn't think so.
The Ravens, I look at the Ravens as second to only the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL this year, though it's tough to sustain that level of play. And the thing that most intrigues me beyond Derrick Henry and how Todd Monken goes about the deployment of him, Lamar cut his weight a little bit. There's a lot of quarterbacks who are changing their physical appearance. Tua famously has slimmed down a little bit. Levis's arms look physically smaller than they did last year. I'm talking about his actual biceps look smaller, and I don't know what specific reason he would have for doing that, but apparently there was an approach that was taken to kind of adjust his strength training. Lamar coming in, looking to kind of return. When you think of Lamar, you think of one of the most electrifying runners in football. He hasn't been quite that the last 2 seasons because there's been an emphasis on trying to get him in a space with a more progressive passing game. And he succeeded that way. But I do think that the dropping of the weight is a signal that he's going to try and be more mobile or a closer version to that just electrifying athlete that we're accustomed to seeing. Not that he still doesn't have it, but like Derrick, you notice Lamar getting caught a little more on those second reaction runs. Something to keep in mind. 615-737-1045 is the number. How the Titans will play defense. We'll talk about it coming up next.
I am starving. If you're like me and it gets to 11:15 on the clock, sitting at work, you're probably the same way and you're thinking about where to go for lunch. And right now, let me tell you, I am dreaming about some Hatty Bees. We were out there on Tuesday. The chicken sandwich with the pimento cheese, the Drinking Buddy beer cheese to go with it, and the crinkle cut fries. Can't wait to hit that up today, the second we get off the air at 1 o'clock at any one of Hatty B's 6 locations. Factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, even the Nashville Airport if you're flying in and out of town. Now, the factory at Franklin is trying something new. They've added breakfast to their menu. So They are open daily at 7 a.m. You got to check out some of their new breakfast items. The classic hot chicken biscuit, the hot chicken and waffle stack. Oh my goodness. Something to be thinking about for your next quick breakfast stop. Maybe on your way to work. Maybe you want to take some folks to brunch if they're in town for the weekend. What better way than to take them to the best hot chicken in Nashville? That is Hatty Bee's. Remember to download the Hatty Bee's app, get your free dessert with it, and pick it up on the go or order for delivery today from Hatty Bee's.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hatty Bee's hot chicken. By the way, we've been telling you that the only place that you can get the Hatty Bee's breakfast is at the factory in Franklin. That is no longer the case, ladies and gentlemen. If you are flying out or into Nashville International Airport, a.k.a. BNA, you can get the Hatty Bee's breakfast menu there. Because I see Taylor H. in the YouTube comment saying, I consider the 25 to 30-minute drive to Franklin every damn morning for that chicken and waffle stack. I can confirm to you, Taylor, it is worth it. I was not a chicken and waffle person before in my life. Now it's all I can think about. It haunts my dreams. It is that good. It's excellent. Meanwhile, non-breakfast related subject matter, Denard Wilson, every time Denard Wilson speaks, he seems like he gets headlines. And it was funny because you played that Weaver interview, and I'm sure you heard him say that he was surprised that this was Denard Wilson's first time being a defensive coordinator. Just the way that he carries himself, the level of specificity, the detail that he brings has been something that has really captured the attention of not just the players, but media and by extension fans, because he's all you hear about anytime he talks. But on the list of things that drive Titans fans crazy, if I gave you this list: left tackle play, corners playing off coverage, or
offensive play calling.
Yeah, that's been a discussion point for a long, long time now. Offensive play calling, left tackle play, or corners playing off. How would you stack them 1 to 3, 1 being the highest level of annoyance, 3 being the least annoying?
Well, left tackle play number 1, just because of the way that it wrecks everything. And so, to be honest, I would go left tackle play 1, offensive play calling 2, and then the corners 3. But we've been talking about this issue with Titans defensive backs for longer than we've been talking about the left tackle or the offensive play calling. We were talking about this in 2020 when the Titans defense took a massive dip, when there was this nebulous, weird, there's no defensive coordinator, a collaborative thing in the defense. Took a massive drop off in the pass rush, but for some reason, I think of that Bengals game in Cincinnati. Jonathan Joseph, right? That loss to Joe Burrow's rookie year Bengals.
Beasley.
Yes.
They had 4 of the starting offensive linemen, 4 of the 5 were backups that day. Clowney, they had so many opportunities to just nail him, and Clowney and Harold were running around back there like chickens with their heads cut off.
So the way we've been talking about this with the Titans cornerbacks has gone back a good 4 to 5 years, I feel like, whereas the offensive play calling disastrous stuff started really after Arthur Smith left, right? Since the beginning of the Vrabel era, at least.
I agree with that assessment, because we were talking about this last night on primetime, and without having it in front of me, I said the same thing. So I've been talking about corners giving up 3rd and 5, playing 6 yards off for 4 straight seasons, or 3 straight seasons now. It feels like, I guess, 4 straight seasons from 2020 to 2023. And last year, when we sought answers for that question, the answer that Chris Harris, who, by the way, is still the cornerbacks coach here, he is one of the holdovers from Mike Vrabel's staff. The answer that Chris Harris gave us, that still, it sticks in my head the same way that Terry Robisky, the former Titans offensive coordinator, telling me that 80% of their offense was derived off Marcus Mariota's ability to run, and me thinking that was the most nonsensical thing that I've ever heard in modern-day NFL football. Chris Harris said last year that they were given the option as players when they wanted to press, which I can't understand that. I can't make sense of it. Not even just because that answer doesn't compute to me, but because if they were given the option and so rarely did they press, then what the hell are why are they still being given the option to play off that way? Now, they're playing off for the same reason that corners in college so often play off, not just because the hash marks and the geography of an actual football field from college to pro are different, but because as an offense, it's easier to create those explosive plays in college football. You want to give your corners, who may not have, first-round pick recovery speed, a little extra room to work, so you're going to play off more often. You don't see a lot of press man coverage in college that way because you don't have the players. And that makes sense. So Titans not having the players to play that way in the last couple of years makes sense. explosive play rate. If I asked you who in the NFL has given up the most opponent plays by a team in total, not just explosive plays, but in total, that's not the best measurement for me to ask you this question. Either way, the Arizona Cardinals have been one of the worst defenses when it comes to explosive play rate. Titans are up there too. You would place them generously over the course of the last 3 years in the top 10 to 15 as far as explosive play rate allowed.
They seem to come at the worst times, too.
Well, that's the thing. The
third downs, right? Now, pass interferences don't get included in that stat, do they? Like downfield PIs on a 3rd and long.
Well,
that ends up being a 45-yard gain or something.
See, now this is the problem because it depends on what outlet. So Pro Football Focus may give you something different than Pro Football Reference, may give you something different than StatMuse, may give you something different than True Media. There's a bunch of different companies out there, outlets out there who are covering this who have different ways of determining. Some may count that because it technically is an offensive play. And if a pass interference gives you a 40-yard gain, that's technically a 40-yard gain that counts for your offense. So it depends which outlet you're looking at it. But the timing of it is the thing that makes you insane. We've talked about the Alec Pierce, Sean Murphy bunting play that set up the Michael Pittman touchdown when you had the Colts basically in hand here at home en route to getting swept last year. We've talked about that being a theme over the course of the last couple seasons, and it's why it's so important to continue to hammer that point home every time we talk to Denard Wilson, because for no other reason, but we want him on record saying, no, we're going to play press, because if it doesn't happen, then we can go back to these quotes and say, but wait, you told us that you were going to take this kind of approach. Why doesn't it look this way? So Denard Wilson is asked specifically about aggressiveness, and it leads to a discussion about the corners from yesterday's media availability that you will hear right now.
It's very intentional for me. For me, I believe press or less. Like, I want them to line up, and I want them to be in front of receivers and challenge the receivers. Ultimately, in this game, if you get free access, it's easy for the quarterbacks to complete balls. So what I do is I want to create hesitation at the line of scrimmage and make them earn it the hard way. Make them earn it, throw the 50-50 ball, but everything else we're going to challenge.
How do you approach that? Do you leave it open to them to do it, or you telling them?
From day one, we press everything.
When guys play off, when they have permission to play off, is it a matter of fear of getting beat over the top generally?
No, sometimes now, listen, offenses, they do a great job of giving you different formations, right? So a lot of offense, when they spread you out and there's wide, I mean, you want to line up and press them. You want to put body on the body. But what offenses do, they shrink the formation to get you to back off. So a lot of times, when you see guys playing off coverage, it might be because of the coverage that you play in and you have zone vision, so you have to be off. To me, it's not about the DBs or players having fear to do it. It's about what do you emphasize, and players do what you emphasize. It's what you want from a scheme standpoint, and then teaching the techniques and letting the corners understand the leverage and where is their help. And when they thoroughly understand where their help is, they can play to certain leverages and take certain routes away.
So that's Denard Wilson speaking to Titans media yesterday about the aggressiveness, about the approach, and how the corners will be coached on playing specifically. Do you want to take a guess? It's in the thousands. I'll just give you that preface. How many passing yards by opponents did the Titans defense allowed last year? In thousands. If I tell you total yards allowed by the Titans defense last year was 5,697.
I'm going to say 4,200.
4,181. Of air yards against the Titans defense. Now, how many of them came in third? We'll call third and long, 3rd and 6 plus here. So anything longer than 3rd and 5. How many of them came specifically in 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6 plus? I don't have that in front of me, but I will work to find that number for you. But 4,181 yards. They were slightly better than the Detroit Lions last year, whose corners
dreadful defensive backfield.
Nightmare in the Detroit secondary, who I think in a playoff game we're starting Titans legend Kendall Vildor.
Kendall Vildor, the football went off the helmet against the Niners.
That's right. They were between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. If the Titans gave up 4,181 air yards, guess how much the Commanders gave up?
Did they lead the league?
Led the league.
I don't know, 4,500?
4,627.
That's brutal.
Bengals, 4,480 air yards allowed by opponents. Top 5 is Commies, Bengals, Seahawks, Broncos, Chargers.
So of those 3 things that have driven Titans fans up a wall more than anything over the last 3-4 years, we'll say, corners playing off consistently, left tackle play, and offensive play calling, which of those 3 do we feel most confident that the Titans are closest to fixing as we wrap up offseason workouts in the first year of the Brian Callahan era?
It feels like the corners, but here's the caveat, okay? Cornerback play is so unpredictable year to year in the NFL. It's kind of like defense or offensive line play. Why offensive line play? Well, because it hurts more. So you're getting in more physical altercations. You're hitting somebody every play. It wears down your body. Defensive line the same. I think that takes a toll when you look at a defense and you say, well, that defense should be good for 2 to 3 years, and then they fall off a cliff the following season because if you're a great defense, you're probably getting pretty banged up. There is so much variance to cornerback play, so many different factors that can affect it. Officiating, the corners themselves, does the athleticism drop off? Is it a product of the rule changes like we're talking about? All these different things that it feels like the moves that they have made should fix the problem. Will it, in fact? I have no earthly idea.
Well, the biggest offseason or the biggest investment of the offseason that the Titans made was L'Jarius Sneed, right? In terms of draft capital, contract, whatever you want to call it. It was L'Jarius Sneed. And that is his entire identity as a football player, is that aggressive, get in your face, jamming receivers at the line of scrimmage, knocking Tyreek Hill off his game in the playoffs. That is his entire identity as a cornerback. And that was their biggest investment of the offseason. And all we've heard from Denard Wilson and from his defensive players is about aggressiveness. And I do think when people hear aggressiveness, what do they think? When they hear aggressive defense? Blitz, right?
It's not a blitzing defense.
Not necessarily. Like the Ravens last year, in fact, the last 3 defensive staffs that Denard Wilson was a part of as a DB coach, Ravens last year, Eagles in 2021 and 2022. In each of those years, those teams that Wilson was a part of were at least bottom half of the league in blitz percentage. And in the last 2, that team that Wilson was a part of led the league in sacks. So in 2022, the Eagles were 18th in blitz percentage. They blitzed 22% of the time, led the league in sacks. Last season, the Ravens were 25th in blitz percentage, 22%, led the league in sacks with 60. So this is not Wink Martindale Raven defense where you are heating up the quarterback. It feels like every chance you get.
No.
Guess
it's
who led
not even Spags.
Guess who led the league in blitz percentage last year?
The Giants.
They were second, actually. The Vikings were number 1.
Flores.
Yes, Brian Flores
is sending engage 8 blitzes in training camp practices last year. Like, Brian, what the hell are you doing?
Calm down.
Like, we know the Titans' offensive line is bad. You don't have to embarrass them this badly in training camp work.
So we need to see it play out. Obviously, it's nice to have all of this talk. We need to see it when the bullets are flying. But aggressiveness does not mean, in theory, sending extra pressure. It's a mindset across the totality of the defense that feels like that tone almost gets set with the corners and obviously in the trenches with Jeffrey Simmons and hopefully Devondre Sweat.
What do you make of this comment? And we'll get some phone calls here in a second. 615-737-1045. Will Anderson, 1983 on YouTube. I'm confident they fixed all 3. Left tackle, play calling on offense, and cornerback play or secondary play. Titans will lose due to turnovers and big penalties. This year, bonehead mistakes will sink the ship.
Wow.
I'm curious as to what is allowing him to draw the conclusion, because they have lost the last 2 seasons for a bunch of different reasons. But the reason it got so much harder on offense, it's not only the left tackle giving up sacks, it's Dylan Radins and Aaron Brewer and I don't know who else, Rupchich or whomever, getting false starts and holding penalties that put you in even worse down and distance situations, which actually Levis talked about on Tuesday, what him and Lloyd Cushenberry are doing to mitigate the pre-snap errors. We never associated Mike Vrabel's teams with undisciplined until the last 2 seasons, where consistently the offensive line, I mean, in some situations on back-to-back plays, would have these false starts or pre-snap penalties that would just make you scream.
Now, I could hear the argument of the Titans likely taking a step back in turnovers on offense this year just because of how much more they're going to be throwing the football and how much more freedom Will Levis has to make decisions with his arm. I mean, Will Levis threw 4 interceptions last year. So, I know he didn't play the whole season. He's probably going to throw more than 4 interceptions in 2024.
Oh, but Lucas, I'll tell you, especially for these offensive-minded head coaches who think about the passing game like they do the running game, they don't want him putting the ball at risk. The turnover,
of course, they don't.
But on the list of things that coaches hate,
sure,
turning the ball over is as big a sin, as grave an error as any you could make. Besides, doing dumb bleep to hurt the team the way that Vrabel used to emphasize. So I don't know how much, when you say how much more freedom he's going to get, I don't know what that exactly is going to look like. I know they're giving him answers to the test as a part of this schematic installation. How well he answers the questions or passes the test in real time remains to be seen. How well he does in those early phases, and right now in minicamp and OTAs and soon thereafter training camp, is going to determine, I think, how much trust the coaching staff is going to put on him specifically beyond just the scheme will give you the answer. Follow these keys. Here are the answers, and you have answers on every play. Your task is to get to the answer as quickly as humanly possible.
My point is higher volume of throwing the football is going to probably lead to more interceptions, right? Just like higher volume of running the football would probably lead to more fumbles of turnovers coming that way. Who's the most pass-happy offense in the NFL last year, you think? Just who comes to mind?
Miami is who I want to say, but okay. I don't know that that's true.
Tua top 5 in interceptions last year, tied with Pat Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence with 14.
Okay.
Right.
615-737-1045 is the number. Bobby is up next. Hey, Bobby.
Hello. Thank you for the call. How does the OTAs and training camps affect the player's salary and the salary cap against the team?
In what context, Bobby?
Is it part of the player's salary, what they get in the OTAs and the mini training camps?
Yeah, there's signing bonuses. They're signing. It's not. They don't get their game check during the offseason.
They don't get fined for missing voluntary portions of OTAs.
No, but what he's saying is the salary cap and stuff like that. So that's worked into their roster bonuses to their you pass certain dates on the calendar and certain players make X amount of money in roster bonus if you're still on the roster by, let's say, June the 1st, right? June 1 designations. We talk about that a lot. These guys have a lot of money tied up, so they're making money year-round, but the bulk of their salary comes in their weekly game checks. Okay, coming up next, we are going to get into the biggest news in sports that's not NFL football. Are the Los Angeles Lakers trying to hire Dan Hurley from UConn? That's the scuttlebutt. We'll talk about it next. Welcome back to the show. Fueled by Hatty Bee's Hot Chicken. Ramon Foster going to be on in the noon hour. We will have Peter Skoronsky at Titans practice today. That'll be the interview for you. You'll hear that in its entirety tomorrow, last day of mandatory minicamp for the Titans today. In non-local related news, although there's enough Lakers fans out there. Jackson, are you just a Lakers fan because of LeBron? Is that the case?
Yes, that's the thing.
Okay, well, that makes sense. There's a lot of LeBron fans. There's a lot of Lakers fans. A lot of LeBron haters. A lot of Lakers haters. But this story about the Lakers pursuing Dan Hurley as their next coach, we discredited the idea of J.J. Redick yesterday because he's LeBron James's friend. He's a podcast co-host with LeBron. They talk a lot of in-depth X's and O's basketball. And by the way, J.J. Redick, excellent at explaining the game. In the minutia, like he can lose some people, which is, I think, at least on the broadcast as we get ready for game one of the NBA Finals tonight between the Mavs and the Celtics. ESPN has the finals, right? Finals on ESPN tonight. So it's J.J. Redick on the call. Redick, Doris Burke, and Mike Breen should be a lot better than they are. I think they're missing some of the vibes that Van Gundy and Mark Jackson used to bring to that booth. I really liked the chemistry that they had anyway. They're still learning. But if it's not going to be J.J. Redick, Adrian Wojnarowski, among the most credible NBA reporters that we have going, sources, Lakers preparing massive offer to UConn's Dan Hurley. They're targeting him as the franchise's next coach. They want to give him a long-term contract offer after doing what he's done with the back-to-back NCAA March Madness champions in the UConn Huskies. They've had preliminary contact, reportedly, with Dan Hurley. And according to Woj, sides are planning to, quote, escalate discussions in the coming days, sources told ESPN. Apparently, and this sounds like some Lakers spin, but apparently Hurley has been the top candidate the entire time. We famously have audio of Dan Hurley scoffing at the idea that he would take another college basketball job because, of course, Kentucky was open this past offseason. In the absence of Calipari going to Arkansas, now arguably one of the most famous college basketball jobs comes open that has a strong tradition of winning, even if it hasn't done it in has it been 10 years? More than 10 years since UK won that title, right? With Anthony Davis?
That was 2012.
Yeah. So it's been 12 years since they won a title at Kentucky, which is a drought that they should not tolerate, nor did they, and why Cal, goes to Arkansas and why they made the changes that they did. Dan Hurley laughed and said, you should ask my wife that question when asked about the idea of moving from UConn, where they've just won back-to-back national titles. And who's to say they shouldn't be favored in this coming season for a third national title, like the Chiefs? Lakers are different. Lakers, what's the most famous job in the NBA? Like the highest profile job in the NBA?
Lakers.
Are you definitively?
Yes.
Did you see what the Knicks just did to the entire NBA consuming public, to the entire sports consuming public? And that was, beating, who did they beat in the first round? Because they lost to the Pacers. I can't remember.
The answer is LeBron James's Lakers.
I don't know if that's true based on the hype that I just saw coming out of New York. Because that team, not named Yankees, I don't know that there's a more popular team, a more supported team in the New York market, in our biggest market. And Los Angeles is obviously the second biggest market in the country, but still, the Knicks are up there today.
Great, huge fan base, tons of hype. The head coach of LeBron James's LA Lakers will be the most famous coach in the NBA.
Okay, sure.
I mean, how many average sports fans can name the head coach of the New York Knicks?
Can you?
Nope.
Dude, stop it.
Who is
it? Can't
Tom
either.
Thibodeau.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, my God. Both of you. Really?
Yeah, go poll 100 people on Broadway. Tell me how many of them can name the head coach of the New York Knicks.
Coach? Well, on Broadway, this is CMA Fest week. This is
not the audience.
There's the NHL draft was here. Alex Doherty, who covers the Preds, was interviewing the Blackhawks GM on Broadway. Didn't know who it was. So, some of this, I think there have to be qualifiers. But I can't imagine the idea of not knowing that Tom Thibodeau coaches the Knicks after watching the Knicks in the playoffs. Anyway. If LeBron is running the show, does Dan Hurley want that job? Because to me, I don't know if there's enough money to make that worth it. You're at his disposal. And he's 40, LeBron, which makes the fact that he continues to be this high level of a player heading into it's at least 20 years for him in the NBA, LeBron James.
Came into the league in 2003.
Yeah. Do you want, even if it's just for 1 or 2 more seasons, the idea of LeBron having almost complete control over the organization? Because I don't think Dan Hurley doesn't strike me as the type to put up with that.
Exactly. That's why this is such a fascinating. Now, LeBron has said publicly he'd love to be coached by John Calipari someday. So I don't know that LeBron is looking for a JJ Redick. I don't know. Maybe LeBron wants a good coach to come in and help the Lakers win. If they actually want to win a championship, I'd be a lot more encouraged by the Dan Hurley hire than a JJ Redick hire. And one reaction I've seen, have you seen this at all? Have you seen the reaction of, for what it's worth, a lot of it on
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
Be good.
From John Fanta at Fox Sports. Dan Hurley met with his players at UConn this morning and informed them he's been in talks with the Lakers. Hurley didn't want to hide the fact that this is real. Huskies have a noon practice, and Hurley told his players it's business as usual for now. But that he's even acknowledging that to his players, I think is news.
Yeah, it's real. Have you seen the reaction of Dan Hurley leaving, if you were to leave college basketball, and Jim Harbaugh having just left Michigan for the NFL, is a commentary and indictment on the state of college athletics?
Yeah, but I didn't need those two to tell you that.
The state of college athletics is absolutely a conversation.
But I mean specific to coaching. I didn't need 2 of the most famous coaches in their respective sports to tell you that. I can look at all manner of coordinators, all manner of assistant coaches, all manner of graduate assistants who are thinking about, do I really want to do this for $20,000 a year just to deal with athletes who are making, I don't know, $100,000 on a name, image, and likeness deal?
Nick Saban retiring is more of an indictment on the state of college athletics than, that is more of a reason for Saban wanting to get out than Harbaugh wanting to go back to the NFL or Dan Hurley. Remember the last time that a coach left the college ranks after winning back-to-back national titles?
Oh, do you have the answer?
Yeah, Billy Donovan.
Oh, yeah.
Who's been in the NBA since, right?
But who famously hated the recruiting, not hated recruiting, hated all the stuff on the periphery around the recruiting, right? Dealing with parents and all these other things under the table. Honestly, Billy Donovan would probably do what's why we talked about him as a legitimate candidate for the Kentucky job, because I think he would do better right now in today's landscape.
Oh, if only Kentucky had actually gotten to hire Dan Hurley and then he got swept up by the Lakers. That actually would have been the best case scenario. But think about, UConn better have a plan if this happens, because what's going to happen if Dan Hurley leaves?
Oh, who was the guy that was there for a couple of years, got them a bunch of NCAA violations. I'm blanking on his name. I think he did win a title, and then things devolved pretty quickly after that. Who won a title at UConn before Dan Hurley?
Ollie, right?
Kevin Ollie.
Yeah, Kevin Ollie.
Kevin Ollie. But they'll have another Kevin Ollie situation, which is you grift off the team that you have for a while.
No,
and
not
the whole thing goes to
necessarily,
hell.
because this is a different era than even 2014 when Kevin Ollie won that national title. It is open season for the next 30 days on UConn's roster.
Right.
And you're talking about altering a paradigm shift in college basketball, because UConn is the clear-cut power right now. And if that roster gets dispersed amongst the rest of the powers that be in college hoops, the parity that could return to college hoops next season, that would be fascinating. So that's what would happen if Dan Hurley leaves. UConn better have a plan. And
Ricky in the F&M Bank chat
I was about
says,
to say, Jeff Goodman reporting.
I wanted to say Seth, but I'm thinking of Seth on CBS, Seth Davis. Jeff Goodman said he thinks Bruce Pearl is the name to replace Hurley at UConn if that comes about. Somebody says Calipari is licking his chops right now. No, he can't go to Arkansas and then bolt for the UConn job. That would be hilarious, though. I'm rooting for that. Coming up next, the final hour. Levis is trying to finish minicamp strong. He had a down day yesterday. We'll tell you why and how his comments on Tuesday factor into this coming up next.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. Today is the final day of mandatory minicamp at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Titans head coach Brian Callahan is scheduled to meet with the media at 12:45, followed by player availability at the podium. You can hear it all right here on 104.5 The Zone. Some moves around the NFL. The Chiefs are reportedly re-signing free agent wide receiver Mecole Hardman on a one-year deal. Hardman, of course, caught the game-winning touchdown in overtime against the Niners in the Chiefs Super Bowl victory back in February. Also, the Tampa Bay Bucks reportedly are signing wide receiver Sterling Shepard, the former New York Giant and former Oklahoma teammate of quarterback Baker Mayfield. In NBA news today, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting the Lakers are targeting UConn head coach Dan Hurley for the head coaching job in L.A. Hurley coming off back-to-back national titles with UConn. Game 1 of the NBA Finals is also tonight at TD Garden. Mavericks at Celtics. Tip-off is at 7:30. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Will Levis needs to have a better day at practice today. It's the final day of Titans mandatory minicamp, and yesterday was not his finest work. 615-737-1045 is the number if you would like to join the discussion. We're going to tell you why that's just fine. It's okay. It's nothing to be too freaked out about, but it is worth noting that of the days that have been open to the media, Will Levis struggled more than any other day that we've seen him in a practice yesterday. The 7-on-7 session was poor. In total, between the two, he was 3 of 8. He did have a ball bounce off the ground into Amulet Lake because he was throwing it with such fierceness and velocity. It's just ricocheting off of everything around the practice field. End up next to, a pile of a goose's finest work. Is it a geese or a goose? It's a goose.
Singular is goose.
Okay, very good. That's Lucas Panzica. Jackson Williams is here, too. We are with you until 1 o'clock. Ramon Foster will join the show in about 15 minutes from now, as will Peter Skoronsky tomorrow. I'm going to have an interview with Peter today at practice, and we'll play that for you, provided that I don't botch the audio situation, tomorrow in the noon hour. Will be good stuff. Among the players who are speaking today, Callahan will also be back at the podium. They gave the coach the day off. So you didn't hear from Brian Callahan, heard from the coordinators yesterday. Callahan is scheduled. Has he ever yet spoken at 12:45?
No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Probably going to be with Blaine and B-Hop at 1 o'clock.
For a month, he has been scheduled to speak at 12:45. He has yet to do so. So, yes, I would anticipate that probably somewhere between 1 and 3. So, Levis looking to finish minicamp strong after a poor day of practice yesterday. What is contributing to the poor practice? Well, he's working on a lot of different things mechanically. It is fair to expect, as he tries to adjust to the new coaching points, to the new footwork, to the new mechanics of his position, that there would be some days that don't look that great. They have had multiple practices. Many of them have been closed. So the fact that we've gotten back-to-back practices to compare to is the thing, it makes it look worse than it might otherwise if you're charting Levis's 7-on-7 completions the way that Jim Wyatt at TennesseeTitans.com is. But it's not just about the footwork and the mechanics and all the other stuff, which you heard from him to start the show. It's about the approach that he takes and the mindset that he takes, which is as big a part of this as anything. Will Levis is now the undisputed starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. And it is clear that he has a mental focus that is centered around, how can I do this as best as humanly possible without basically getting bent about every little thing that may or may not go right, wrong, or indifferent throughout the course of my practice, my film sessions, my gameplay, all of it. How can I lock in a little better? So Levis talked about the idea of maturing into the new role that he's in when he last spoke to the media on Tuesday.
Yeah, I just feel like I've done a better job of that just throughout my career in general. Definitely even last year, better than I was in college. And now I feel like I'm just more in a mature, developed position where I'm able to really just learn and, take the teachings from a bad rep opposed to, letting it affect me on the next one.
So he has to figure out a way to better mentally compartmentalize. We can see, do you think that people, when they're talking about Will Levis as a quarterback, like Titans fans, how often do you think his emotional makeup comes up?
Yeah, I mean, you think of the image of him in Miami after that comeback, colliding with, I think it's Tim Kelly on the sideline.
Bodying up his OC.
Right? I mean, flexing, like helmet off, vein popping out of his neck. And I know, I get why fans and teammates get fired up by that stuff.
Oh, sure.
And I think that did go away towards endearing himself to his teammates, the way he put his body on the line, how fired up he gets, just his energy, all of it.
Just like the debut in Atlanta, right? Jeff Simmons, Will Damn Levis. I told y'all that's Will Damn Levis.
But just like you don't want your quarterback to get too low after a bad rep, like Levis was talking about, you don't want him to get too high either. So if all goes well for Levis in 2024, I think we see less of those images of vein popping out of the neck, bodying coaches on the sideline type of thing, right? Like, I think we see a little bit less of that because that would mean to me a more measured, calm, cool, and collected quarterback. How often do we see Joe Burrow doing that? Right?
Oh,
and they're different guys.
You picked the
you're right. That's
literally Joe Cool.
The opposite. Okay, fine.
Brady, Brady, an insane person.
That's true.
Brady. So there's levels to this, right? Patrick Mahomes is constantly talking on the field. Constantly talking. Now, he may say, "Oh, you almost got me on that one," like he's wagging a finger at the defensive lineman, like, not this time, big guy. I got you there. Or you have Joe Flacco, you have Burrow, is Hurts an emotionally explosive individual? No. But Jalen Hurts has something about him when it comes to clutch situations where I have trouble casting a lot of doubt on Jalen Hurts' ability to go out there and win a football game. But he doesn't. He speaks with his play as opposed to with his neck veins, right? Brady constantly screaming, bitching at offensive linemen or skill position players or younger wide receivers who he will box out, right? If they don't run the routes to the right depth or they don't make a play on the ball when he expects them to. Like Brady famously used to freeze dudes out.
Jameson points out Phillip Rivers during his playing days. So yeah, there are examples. All these guys are competitors. All these guys can get fired up. But I don't know, even Patrick Mahomes, like he's out there, he's chatting. Obviously, you see the competitive fire and all of those things, but we don't really see the Patrick Mahomes throwing his helmet off on a sideline, screaming and bodying up a coach after a big play. Like I don't see that often in most elite NFL quarterbacks, personally.
Well, I just don't think I just don't think it factors into like elite level quarterbacks. I think that's just personality. So Patrick Mahomes Greg Cosell has pointed this out to me a million times. We've been doing the podcast for 3 years now. Greg always talks about Mahomes' frenetic motion. Pat drifts in the pocket. Sometimes it can create pressure, but you don't coach it out of him because Pat is more comfortable rolling while he gets ready to set his feet and throw. Some of this stuff, Josh Allen, YOLO Josh Allen. How much of YOLO Josh Allen do you want to tamp down, understanding that in moments you're going to need YOLO Josh Allen, bleep it, somebody's down there, Wyoming Josh Allen, to go out there and win you a game? Levis and Allen have a lot of parallels there. Because Josh Allen is fired the hell up. He's constantly flexing out there on the field. He's constantly, jawing.
Putting his body on the line.
Defensive players. He's constantly throwing himself around there. And I think you do see that carry over to the sideline a lot of times. So I don't know that you have to see it less. He just has to, it's almost like a serial killer, okay? You have to have that switch where you are both leader of men, guy who's leading the charge, commander-in-chief or field general, whatever kind of cliche that you do. And also, you have to have that servitude aspect to you if you're the quarterback, because you almost always, one of the best things about the quarterback position, or one of the things that coaches talk about the best quarterbacks having, is almost like an outright deference. So you have to be one end of the extreme and also another, because you have to have the coach's trust to be able to lead the team on the field in a way that the coaching staff feels befitting. Now, there's never been a more blurred line between that power dynamic than in today's modern NFL, where the coach and quarterback are oftentimes basically partners as opposed to an employee-employer relationship.
You're going to have to help me out with the serial killer comp there.
Well, you switch it. You see these guys flip a switch or guys or gals flip a switch all the time. Like they can be normal, mild-mannered human beings out there, and then they flip a switch and they're knifing you in the neck 17 times or whatever. It's like OJ. It's OJ. OJ's a great example. OJ over the top. I just watched the documentary again. That's why I'm bringing up OJ, not just because he passed. R.I.P. ? Probably not. It's not an R.I.P. situation. It's kind of like straight to hell, no speed bumps with OJ. I think that's more appropriate. Either way, OJ, nicest human being in the world, flips a switch, knifes a woman to death. That's the kind of disparity that I'm talking about there. Killer Instinct comes up a lot with. I was trying to do something with Killer Instinct, and I got sidetracked a little bit.
You just use Killer Instinct.
Jackson just yelling in my ear, go to break.
Maybe let's get out of here.
All right. You know what? Why don't I remove myself from the situation?
Why don't you flee the scene, OJ? We'll get Ramon Foster on here to talk offensive line on the other side.
I don't drive a Bronco, but I do drive a Ford, so I will head on down to practice.
Robert does. I'd love to see you speed out of here in Robert's Bronco after that
I will leave
segment.
the scene of the crime, and I will head on down to Titans practice, where I will talk to Peter Skoronsky and bring you back an interview. I will leave you with Ramon Foster. That's coming up next.
Welcome back. Final day of Titans mandatory minicamp. We'll hear from head coach Brian Callahan, again, scheduled for 12:45. We'll see if that happens. Either way, you can hear that live here on The Zone, as well as player availability, as they are out at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park for the first time, really until we see the Titans at training camp. So we largely have the sample size of offseason workouts. Still, at the end of the road, a little ways to go. But Ramon Foster has been out there for a handful of practices. He joins us now on 104.5 The Zone at the Ramon Foster on Twitter. And I am looking, Ramon, at the Ramon, Kayla, and Will Twitter account, the draft you guys had today for best appetizers.
Yeah.
And are you getting flack for this? Are you getting flack for the bourbon steak duck fat fries and the Stony River whiskey shrimp compared to Robert's more, everyman fried pickle submission?
Yes, I'm getting a lot of flack, man. And this is a first for me, and this is new. I know Buck lives in that world where he doesn't seem like he's amongst the people, right? It's one of those scenarios. But when it comes to me paying the price for something I want to enjoy, it's got to be nice. And those duck fat fries at that really good steakhouse is more than worth it. But I also brought it back, Lucas. The Philly cheesesteak egg rolls, I mean, that's a dish for the people.
How Kayla is dusting you guys in these votes, and how competitive is this getting between the four of y'all? It's Kayla, Will, Ramon, and Robert in last right now in the best appetizers draft. I feel like this is bleeding through on the air, and I'm hearing you guys go back and forth on this. Who has been the king or queen of the drafts as of late?
Well, I will say I think Will and Kayla really want to win. I think it's a unique situation. Kayla got called out last week for having a lot more followers than us, which is also, part of her influence in the votes. It just is what it is. And that's how it is. That's why I'm begging Elon to give me back my old Twitter account so I can dust all of them in those polls. But Lucas, it's bragging rights, man. It's the ability to say, I am better than you on this. Even though it's virtual and not real life, we have a pride in saying mine is better than yours when it comes down to our personal preferences. So it's sticky. And again, to your point with Bert just got to do better, man. Clearly, going to the shadows is not a thing that a lot of people want to do with him, which is why his vote, it sucks right now, Lucas. So, yeah, he's got to step it up a little bit and get a little bit more class on him. Get more than just Crocs to work. And that's my brother, and I love him. But that's just the vote shows he's not important on Twitter. The people are speaking. You're right. Now, I don't know how many bragging rights are being, claims are being staken with bragging rights at Titans minicamp with position battles taking place along the offensive line. But a lot of action over the last couple of weeks as Bill Callahan really gets a chance to work with these guys for the first time. And just for you, being on the practice field as a former lineman, how much fun have you had just watching Bill Callahan operate with this group? Lucas, it's been really fun. One, because I can sit back and laugh at those dudes strain and be in situations where they got to work, man. I'll say this. I see the process that Coach Callahan is doing, Bill Callahan with the offensive line, and he's really first sharpening their minds. I think he's breaking them down to build them up. Every day of OTAs that they've had and I've been to, he's legitimately had, I think it's either 40 or 45 minutes of pure hell. And that hell is nothing but just straight work that he's giving those guys. If this fan base has ever questioned how good this group can be with the amount of talent that they have, you will rest assured that at least at a minimum, they have been taught the right things. They have been given technique. They have been given, honestly, a work ethic to show guys how to be NFL caliber linemen. I think if you look in the past, Roger Saffold was already established, and he had that workers mentality, that tough guy assertion about him, right? And the same goes for Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan grew into a role that showed that he was the big boss as it pertains to his style of play. And Ben Jones is himself too, right? You got a lot of finished product. What you have now is a group of guys that have to grow up together. And that honestly is the best group to have. And it may be some subtractions that happen over the next couple of years, but consistently, Lucas, what I've seen from Coach Callahan and his group has been, we are going to work. We're going to hit Bertha and Olga. We're going to not only just hit those two, but the way he has them going against each other and one-on-ones, how physical it gets, how forceful they have to be, they understand what, and I always kind of say this with guys in sports, you got to learn how to strain. You got to learn how to do more than just the baseline. And that's what he's teaching them, man. And it's, Lucas, to your point, for somebody that doesn't have to do it, it's fun watching this grow. And it's fun watching those guys not have any pushback. And I honestly don't think Coach Bill Callahan will take any pushback either, because they really don't have any breaks.
Well, and we've talked about this on the air, Ramon. This is, no disrespect towards Jason Hotailing, the former Titans O-line coach, who is still very early in his NFL coaching career, currently the assistant O-line coach in Chicago. But last year was his first year as an offensive line coach in the NFL. So I don't know that there's a position group, Moan, that is being taught right now by a coach that is more on the other end of the spectrum than the coach that they had running their room last year, just even for the fact that Jason Hotailing was in year one of his career as an offensive line coach. He could be in this league for, let's say, 20 years. 20 years from now, Jason Hotailing could be a fantastic offensive line coach, and he will be worlds away from what he was in year one, like anybody in any field, right? And then in comes Bill Callahan, who's been doing this now for decades at every level. And I imagine that jump in experience and wealth of knowledge is drastic. I'm just curious to you, who you worked under multiple offensive line coaches in the NFL with the Steelers, obviously Mike Munchak for a long part of that. So could you kind of put into context for us just how much of a difference legitimate top-tier coaching at that position can make in the NFL?
Lucas, great way to set up. It's a big difference. It's like getting a hand-me-down car from your grandmother that's a 1986 Monte Carlo, right? Fold down windows and the AC don't work and the brakes are squeaking. And then eventually you end up getting a Mercedes-Benz. Like, that's the differences that we're speaking of. Like, it's legitimately, like, giving guys a plan, giving guys an understanding. And truthfully, as hard as they're working, Lucas, is making it easier for them on game day. It's giving them a better understanding on why we block each other this way. That experience goes a very long way. Like, I never forget when Muntz first came in with us, he was teaching us technique things that the older coaches had never brought up. And I asked questions, why are we doing it this way? He said, you'll see on game day. And that stuff correlated. It's not just busy work to where some coaches just have guys running and hitting the ground, right, Lucas, and just to get up and say, I worked those guys to death. No, everything is pointed. Everything has a purpose to it. And when you have a method on how you're going to teach somebody and coach guys, they, one, will understand that, one, you care about them and their careers. That's what I think is the biggest just eye-opener to those guys that they'll see in camp, is all the small things that you're getting technically, all the small things you're getting as far as. And to your point about Coach Hotailing to Coach Bill Callahan is this. There's just a difference in just the knowledge given. And the other side of it, too, Lucas, that we don't speak about a lot, and I know we bring it up from time to time, but there is a player-to-coach respect factor that has to go in place. I have had first-year coaches or rookie or young coaches at my position in Pittsburgh, even in college, too, to where you as players somewhat run over a guy because the respect isn't there. Or you question what he tells you because, well, I've never seen that offensive line do it, or I've never seen that team do it. Respect of your coaches matter. And when that coach respect also translates into his body of work with the Pro Bowls and All-Pro guys he has, it makes you buy in more, Lucas. That's how you win games. Like, coaches are facilitators. If you can get them to buy into what you're selling and also execute what you're selling them, that's how you win games. It's not, let me just work guys just for the hell of working them. No, that doesn't resonate to a bunch of grown men who are making more than six figures a year that want to continually make that. And not just that, you don't want to just be a dude, right? I mean, just a guy. You want to be dudes that are very impactful to your team winning. And I'll even say this as far as the respect factor of it and how he's reshaping these guys' minds, too, is, one, they're young. So his ability to be very impressionable on them is huge. But, Lucas, to even go even further, we may not see the benefits of all of this for me to taper everybody's expectations until about 2, maybe 3 years. Because if we looked at the right tackle spot, I think we still see there's a spot to be filled there, and we don't know if it's really on the roster. It may be for this year. So there will continually be probably a second-round tackle, maybe another, third-round guard that are coming to play. These types of things will happen until you find the pieces that work well together. So I like where they are. I have personally been in this exact spot to where you get a legendary coach and you have to buy into what he's selling. But more than anything, they have a reputation of getting results.
Ramon Foster is with us as we kick over to the left side, Ramon, with J.C. Latham. So you say we may not see really the Titans reap these benefits of getting back to the place where they feel like they have one of the best offensive lines in the league for 2 to 3 years. You're right. Right tackle position, you feel like the long-term answer likely is not in the building at the moment. They're going to have to work with what they have. They do hope the long-term answer is there at left tackle. But for J.C. Latham, how much actually can be accomplished in this time period with no pads on versus at training camp when you do have the pads popping and the reps are live, and then into the regular season? Like the different stages of a rookie who's going to be thrown in as a day one starter. I guess all that to ask, what kind of growing pains should be expected? Like, how do we couch expectations for J.C. Latham just within the first few weeks of his first season, his first regular season as the Titans left tackle?
Man, first and foremost, his first game is going to be on the road. That in itself is that's trial by fire right there, right? Like, you have to go deal with the crowd noise, and it's going to be a chaotic. I'm talking about Chicago Bears Stadium, 100%. It will be wild there with Caleb Williams being there. But here's the things you ask that he can work on right now. He needs to be able to work on his technique, perfect it, right? He needs to be able to show that, hey, he can get out of his stance and kick to a point that he can cover up a very fast, hard, and key. Those are the things you have to show right now, because when training camp comes on and you're able to put on the pads, one thing he will have to his advantage is what we've talked about a lot, his strength. He's strong as an ox. The way he moves Bertha and Olga is not the same the way everybody else does. I don't want to call it effortless for him, but you see his strength. So this time of the year right here is all about footwork and technique, being in the right spot, making sure the same stuff we heard Coach Mack say, his eyes and the stripe on his helmet being in the right place, and ingesting as much of the playbook as he possibly can. As it pertains to the season and going into camp, Lucas, he has to show, all right, now we can actually run and dog people out without hurting my teammates. He needs to be a people mover. He needs to be a guy that's being able to finish up his blocks, not just oozing to a finish, and not also relying on his strength. I will say his strength will need to be a strong part of his game because guys are going to test him. We as a press audience here have talked a lot about his strength. So guys are going to try to run through his face, play one of every single game. How does he manage that? Is his technique good enough to where if a guy fake bull rushes him and hit him with a swim move, can he adjust to it? Josh Allen is going to want to line up and go see him in Jacksonville, correct, Lucas?
Right.
These are the things that he needs to be able to show from this portion of the year with his technique. How sound can he get it? And how much can he not rely upon just grabbing guys and holding on to them? Although I will say, I'm not contradicting myself when I say this. He needs to be able to use it, but not rely upon it because he's at a position of where guys want the quote unquote basketball type tackles. He needs to be able to show that he is agile on his feet also.
Is that one of the toughest adjustments that you see guys having to go through from college to pro, especially players in that physical mold of a J.C. Latham, when maybe they were able to more easily rely on those aspects of their games at the college level, that it's not necessarily going to translate, relying on strength, being able to just grab a guy and hold on to him when all else fails? Is that a leap that you see a lot of young players having trouble with in the NFL?
It is because in college, you just play the best athlete, right? And that best athlete is he's out there for the most part. Well, in the NFL, the same thing we talked about a little bit with like Arden Key. He's known more as a rush specialist. They will send a rush specialist in there and say, hey, you know what, matchup-wise, go cook him. Because, again, if he can't grab you, then he can't block you. That is, Lucas, the biggest issue that I've seen guys adjust to where they play mental gymnastics with you to where, oh, I'm about to bull rush. First play of the game. First 3 plays of the game, they elect to lose blocks, right, as far as defensive linemen go. I'll lose these first 3 because I just want to hit him dead in his chest and make him think I'm going to just, play his physical game with him. And then the next series out there, guess what they do, Lucas? They hit you with a little finesse. It's more mental in this league than it is physical. Guys lose a lot and end up out of the league because they can't handle the mentality of a guy being able to do stuff that you've never seen a player do before. I'll never forget going against Sean Ellis my second year in the NFL. He was playing with the Jets. And he was a guy that was tall, big, and within space still, for his age, quick. So you know what he did? He immediately tried to beat me inside. And from that point, all I thought about all game was, don't get beat inside. Don't get beat inside. And you know what he did? He faked inside, and he went outside for a sack. And I was just like, yep, that's what they do in this league. They will game you because, one, there's not much of a rotation, and then they have guys that are real specialty pieces that get after you, and then eventually you'll run into a guy that's like a DeForest Buckner or a Aaron Donald that just is going to be a headache all day long, Lucas. So that is the difference, man. It's just knowing at the end of the day you got to be sharper mentally than physically as it pertains to how you play this game. Like, I feel like I'm teaching the class. It really is an art, Lucas, to where it ain't just 300-pounders blocking 290-pound guys. You got to be cerebral, and that's one thing I've heard about J.C. Latham. You also got to be good enough physically and athletically to really hold your own, and I think he has that, but it's a matter of seeing what it looks like in real time because, as Mike Tyson says, right, everybody got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
I'm curious for you, playing at Tennessee and then in Pittsburgh, and all the different spots that you played, whether it was tackle, right guard, left guard, how quickly did you find your development as a young player in the league accelerated when you really settled into your left guard position that you would remain in for years? Like, was that kind of a breaking point for you in a positive way? Because I hear Dylan Radins talking to reporters yesterday, almost sounding relieved, Ramon, about the fact that he knows where he's at. He knows he's going to be playing guard in this offense and can just sharpen all of those tools and put all of his efforts towards that position. How much can that benefit a player to not be looking around? I understand versatility is important, but just for you, how much did it help you when you kind of had that realization that this is where I'm going to play, this is where I can make my mark in the NFL, and all your attention could be diverted towards being good at that position?
Man, it's such a relief. But to Dylan Radins' credit, there is a saying, I think, across, because I heard it here with the Titans, so it must be around all 32 NFL teams. Initially in the NFL, it is the same thing we're dealing with Traylon. The more you can do, the longer you stay around. Well, at about year 3 and 4, it's the more you can do, the less you get paid. So you better find a specialty position. And that's where he is as a player right now, is he's trying to make sure I can dial it in. But the advantage that he has is knowing what the left tackle likes, knowing what even the right tackle likes, and playing both sides as far as the guards go, being flexible enough. There is an advantage to it, but it also, I'll say this, make you appreciate, okay, this is where the coaches see me. So now, where I was just telling you earlier, where you have a guy that's been 6-7 years in the league at one position, so they understand the mentality of prep. They understand their body, which way they will move, either right or left better. And I think for him, he can finally say to himself, instead of in practice, going from right guard to left tackle in a camp, no, I am here, and I know all things about the position. Lucas, it hyper-concentrates your ability to develop. But again, I'll say this about Dylan Radins, too. That's not a bad thing that he's played across the offensive line. That is honestly what you have to do as a young guy is to survive a little bit more. And truthfully, we don't know if this is going to be where J.C. Latham lines up, right? At the end of his career, is he a left tackle? Like, if he has to move over to the right side, or even if they have to kick him into guard, there will still be an appreciation of understanding what the person to my right or left needs from me. I think me playing tackle initially helped me be a better guard because I knew against this guy, he's quicker than my tackle, so I'm going to have to help a little bit more. And it truly does help the development of you if you can learn more than one position. And it also just creates value down the line, too, Lucas, to where you stay in the league a little bit longer if you do have to change and go to a different team, the way like a guy Daniel Brunskill has as of late. You know, he's played center, I think, in his second year in the NFL, and right now he's right back at center. So he's in a spot right now where he can really make this roster and be the backup center and the swing interior guy on game day. That's not a bad thing for him. Yes, he doesn't have a position, but he's also going to collect the check and be a part of a team.
Ramon Foster with us on 104.5 The Zone. You hear him on Ramon, Kayla, and Will every morning from 6 to 10 right here. Real quick on the way out, Ramon, because we're kind of up against it. Because when you say that about J.C. Latham, Titans fans start to get a little antsy at even the idea of the guy they drafted at 7 not being that long-term solution at left tackle. So real quick, between now and the start of training camp, what are you more curious about? What is a bigger question for you on this offensive line? Is it, can J.C. Latham settle into that left tackle spot? Or is it, who's going to start at right tackle? What is a bigger concern for you as we get ready to get into this bridge between now and training camp?
Oh, Lucas, that is a good question for us to be up against it. I have one that's better than that. Who wins the right guard spot? Because here's the way I feel about it. I'd much rather have the guard center guard locked up before the right tackle, because I think with this offense and then the way Brian Callahan and his history of hiding protections and hiding bad players as far as the right tackle position go, or Cincinnati goes with the offensive line, I feel better about his approach to being able to hide the right tackle spot and not having to compromise the offense way better than I can with the not knowing who the right guard is going to be. I think that is probably the hotter competition in this camp than it is the right tackle position to me, because if you listen to Denard Wilson yesterday, he said what? He said our ability to push the middle of the pocket is more important than anything else on this defense, so we don't have to send pressure. And I think a lot more teams are going to start concentrating on beating up the interior of the offense way more than they ever have before, because most offensive lines across the league have somewhat gotten smaller and try to get athletic guys. So what does the defense do? Go get me a big body guy like Devondre Sweat or Sebastian Joseph Day that can push the middle of the pocket to create chaos and get the quarterbacks flushed out. I'm more worried about the right guard spot.
Brian Callahan's talked about it, the importance of firmness of the pocket, one of the things that can lead to the biggest issues for a quarterback when that part collapses. Ramon Foster with us on 104.5 The Zone. Appreciate you, Moan. See you in the morning.
Absolutely. See you, my brother.
At the Ramon Foster is where you can find him on Twitter, the account that Elon did not take away from Ramon, Kayla, and Will, 6 to 10 every day on The Zone. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show with the polls. Maybe Brian Callahan will be at the podium. Find out next. Little jelly roll on CMA Fest week. We put this to a poll yesterday, but we did not have time to end up getting to it. How do you, as a Nashville local, handle CMA Fest weekend? Jackson, do you have any particular strategies that you take over the course of these next few days as thousands of country music fans descend upon downtown Nashville?
Avoid downtown like it's the plague.
I learned that the hard way this morning. Just driving into work. Going to have to take the interstate, at least for the rest of the week. But not tomorrow, because we're going to be out at Dixon. I'll be taking Highway 40 out east, right? No, Dixon's out west. What am I saying? Either way, Greystone Golf Club, that's where we'll be. Hope to see you guys out there. There are very limited spots available. 1045thezone.com is where you can go and sign up to put a team together. There is 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. flights, and accompanied by great food, cocktails, and prizes. Choose between one of the two flights and tee off with us tomorrow. The 1045 The Zone Spring Golf Classic is presented by Ferguson and State Water Heaters. So hope to see some of you guys out there. Do it quick because there's very limited teams remaining. Again, 1045thezone.com is where you go to get tickets, and we will see you tomorrow. We'll be broadcasting live from 10 to 1, as will every Zone show from 6 to 6. Meanwhile, Titans should be getting off the practice field as we speak. Brian Callahan will be at the podium very shortly, and we'll see if we get any news and notes from Titans reporters on the way out. Teron Davenport putting out the daily attendance tweet. He says no sign of Tavondre Sweat, Keiris Jackson, or Nicholas Petit-Frere at Titans minicamp. Does that mean Jeffrey Simmons was out there? I'm not sure. We'll get more minicamp musings tomorrow, the final minicamp musings from Buck tomorrow when we're out there at Greystone Golf Club in Dixon. You should hear Brian Callahan speaking with the media with Blaine and B-Hop. That's coming up next. But for now, let's do some polls.
I'm going to make you...
These are the polls, and they're brought to you by Two Rivers Ford. Two Rivers, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What will be the more improved Titans unit in 2024? 61% going corner, 39% going with the offensive line.
There's probably more of a basis to say corner at the moment with L'Jarius Sneed, if anything else. Just the fact that you have established veterans coming in that are already proven in this league. There's probably still too many question marks, right, about the offensive line with the rookie at left tackle. You don't know who the starting right tackle is, or with certainty who the starting right guard is. We've talked about Sadiq Charles. It feels like that he's in sort of pole position, so to speak, to take that starting role. But I think I agree that cornerback feels more secure at the moment with the Titans.
What will you watch if it's on at the same time? 53% going with a college football playoff game, 30% saying they will be using two screens, and 17% says Texans versus Ravens. This is incorrect. It is Texans, Chiefs, and Ravens and Steelers. That's
it is. That's my fault. I'm the one that tweeted that out. But I think the principle remains the same, right? Big NFL matchup, Texans, Ravens. That'd be, just as good of a matchup to watch as Texas Chiefs, right? Two AFC contenders going up against the Houston Texans out of the AFC South. So the principle remains the same. I think I'm with the 53% that I would go CFP if I had to pick, but got to dual screen it in that moment.
Going to be an elite dual screen evening. What is still your biggest concern about the Titans offensive line? Karen going injuries. The Brian saying, can JC actually play left tackle?
I'm going with that. JC Latham and how he adapts at the left tackle position has to be the biggest question, right? Throughout the course of the offseason. I thought that was going to be the moment JC Latham was drafted. I thought that JC Latham and how he adapts to the left tackle spot in the NFL after playing right tackle throughout college at Alabama, I thought that was going to be the biggest talking point of the Titans offseason through mandatory minicamp, OTAs, through that stretch between minicamp and training camp. I was wrong because it's been Treylon Burks, right? And even after that, I feel like we've talked more about Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. At least we've heard more about Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears from coaches and players than JC Latham at left tackle. But Brian Callahan is up at the podium, so let's at least catch the early portion of the Titans head coach after the final day of mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, a little really body catch is what we call body catch.
But just try not to make the same mistake twice. You know, make one mistake, learn.
And you know what?
Improve.
Hell of a job.
Thank you.
A hell of a job. That was good. So today was for us. It's our third day in a row in the mini camp. Guys have worked really hard these first 2 days. We got a really good 7-on-7 period in before we got to our situational walkthrough. And so what you saw today was a very specific set of points in the game that come up, you know, sometimes once a year, sometimes a couple times a year, sometimes maybe once every 5 years. And so you're just making sure that we're on top of those situational components of the game and the time and the clock, both offensively and defensively. And so that's what that last kind of half hour-ish of practice was a very choreographed, specific set of situations that come up. So first time we've got a chance to do that. We're sort of at the very end of our installs on both sides of the ball, and so that's sort of the last thing that we hit is this situational work where you're working against now all the different things that come up in those spots. And as I told the team this morning, that's, you know, you win the games in the NFL on the margins, and those are winning and game-losing, game-winning plays that they have to be able to make and be able to be prepared for the situation, aware of the situation. You got to execute in a moment. So that's what that was today. Really nice job by those guys, but. Offensively, we bounced back from not great day yesterday in 7-on-7 in the red zone. Defense kind of kicked our teeth in, and then today they came out with some good energy, and our first set of 7-on-7 was much better. So good to see that.
Mm-hmm. You know, you see the ball go a certain place. Sometimes it looks like it's maybe in a double coverage situation. Is that something that you're challenging your quarterbacks and receivers to make those tight window throws, or is that more of look around when you watch the film and see if there was somewhere else you could have gone?
Yeah, that's a good question. 7-on-7 to me has always been a bit of an experimental period for quarterbacks. It's, you know, there's no consequence, and sometimes you use those reps to find out what you can get away with. You know, I encourage those quarterbacks to maybe not necessarily check the ball down every time in 7-on-7. Test your throws. Test the throw into a tight coverage. Test it into a tight window, and then we can coach off the decision making. But sometimes there is a place for a little bit of experimentation and trying to see what you can and can't get away with in a live motion period. So yeah, they're allowed to have some freedom to try some throws, and we coach off of it. And you can say, look, we know that you'd probably get to the back here in a real game, or you check the ball down here, but we don't mind an aggressive approach sometimes in 7-on-7.
Of something like that, do you ever separate the scheme from the quarterback and say, well, this play worked?
That is Titans head coach Brian Callahan speaking after the final day of mandatory minicamp. You can hear the rest of that press conference coming up next with B-Hop and Blaine, and we will see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. out at Greystone Golf Club in Dixon, Tennessee, right here on 104.5 The Zone.
So you try to keep the process goal there with what you're trying to get done schematically and then decision-making wise by the players. And so